Hey guys, what's going on? Today we're gonna be doing another what it looks like video, all on minnow baits. Regardless if you love them or hate them, fish eat minnows. It's a bait that has totally changed the entire bass fishing industry. It's something you don't want to overthink, but at the same time, there's a lot of little nuances with these baits. Baits that roll, baits that don't roll, when and where to do each. So in this video, we're going to be showing you guys underwaters of all these baits that we have here. We're going to break it down, talk about what each bait does, when, where, why I'll be throwing it in certain situations. We use some different variations of jig heads on these baits. Obviously in a perfect world, we'd love to just have one to keep all our variables constant, but certain plastics do pair perfectly with specific jig heads designed for that plastic. So when that was the case, we kept those plastics on those designed jig heads for the plastic. And for minnow baits where they don't have a specifically designed jig head for them, we just kept it really simple with a lighter weight standard ball head jig head. I just want to point out too that there's no magic blueprint to any of this here, because there's just so many different baits, components that all go into this nowadays, between plastisol, elastec, heavy tungsten heads, lead heads, different line ties. The list goes on and on, literally. That's really the super cool thing about the whole minnow system now. Again, there's so many options. You can really plug and play here and there. And that's been super fun over the past couple years, is to really try different things. And there truly is no wrong answer. There's no right answer either. That's kind of the cool thing about it. We have all the underwater footage right here. I'm going to be watching it right now as we talk about each bait. We shot all these baits in high frame rates so we can slow things down, give you guys a really cool look, an up close look at these baits. So let's get into it. Let's start with the Z-Man scented jerk shad. So this bait, obviously, it's one of the pioneers, I'd say, in the world of minnow fishing. This is a classic winning bait by Gussie a handful of years ago now, and it's won a lot of other money on tour over the years. So looking at the underwater footage of that jerk shad, as you can see, it's one of the prettier minnows out there, in my opinion. It just has a supernatural look. That tail just wags. You can throw this bait on a lighter jig head for fish that are floating up high, really pull it away. It works well like that. But also you can put this bait on a heavier head, catch them like what Gussie was doing, kind of showed the world that whole system of really hanging this bait. And you can even see in the underwater footage here, some of that stuff kind of hanging on the bottom of the bait. That's that scented super gel that's on there. So these baits come scented, ready to rock. Anyone who's fished with these baits knows exactly that smell. And these baits come in 6 different sizes, all the way from smaller minnows, finesse fishing smallmouth, up to big minnows, down south fishing largemouth. They got you covered. And another cool thing with the elastec material, again, it's really buoyant. So I don't have to worry as much with that line tie like you do other baits. If I throw out there and lose one, I'm in a big group of them, I can just drop it back down there. And I know that that bait is going to be looking just right again, as long as you didn't pull it down. If that bait is snug and they stay on keepers really well, it's another cool thing with that elastec material. It's really hard to pull down. So if I lose one in a group of fish, just drop it back down there, and I'm right back in the fight with them again. That bait, whether I'm hanging under the boat or if I'm making a long cast, it keeps a supernatural presentation. And while we're on the subject of Z-Man baits, let's take a look at the graph shad. This is one of those baits that comes pre-rigged like we were talking about. You can see that jig head just fits perfectly on that minnow. Out the pack, she's ready to go. There's no trying to line it up, get it perfectly straight. That minnow's ready to go right out the pack. And as you can see in the underwaters, this is a super realistic looking bait. Looks just like a little thread fin. It's a real finesse presentation. You're not going for the rolling style like a lot of other baits. This is a super finesse presentation where that tail is just quivering when you're barely pulling that bait along. Super, super natural, really good for, again, cold water, clear water conditions. The line through head design, you don't see that with a lot of other jig head minnows. That makes the bait run perfectly straight, so that way, again, there's no messing with knots trying to get that bait to look right. It's all about finding a different look these days, like we've mentioned. So giving them something a little bit different is a really big thing now. As you can see there, it's also a real thin design that really helps that bait get down there quick to those fish. Again, if you're scoping fish in clear water where they're just flying around out in 20, 30 feet, This bait is perfect for that. It comes in 3/16 up to a 3/8 size. Again, those heavier sizes, that slim design gets down to fish quick. Let's look at another bait that has made quite literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, the Arapaho Crush City Freeloader. This is another one of those baits that, again, kind of led the way in the world of minnow fishing nowadays. Wheeler, Connell, these guys really put this bait on the map and showed the power of it, all the way from way up north to way down south. If there's minnow profile bait fish in the system, they're probably going to be chewing on this thing. As you can see, this is a bait that has a lot of rolling action, that far roll from side to side. And that's a bait that really plays when fish are pretty aggressive. When they're grouped up, that action can really call fish in. And once they get on that thing, again, that rolling action, there's just something about it that just drives fish nuts. I don't know what it is, but that rolling action can definitely have a certain time and place when minnow fishing. I throw this bait a lot, and I like to either just throw it on a ball head like you can see in the underwater footage, or with the VMC hybrid jig head. Either one of those makes that bait roll. And with that freeloader, you'll notice it right out the pack. Again, it's another super scented bait. It's a really unique smell. I love the smell of it personally. I think the fish do too. Everybody knows that, you know, when those fish get right on that bait, right behind it, and you're just pulling them along, sometimes it just takes that little bit of extra nip to sometimes get them to commit. And sometimes I think the scent does that. I really like throwing this particular minnow when fish are a little bit deeper. I don't know what it is about that, but it seems like a rolling bait on a little bit deeper fish that are 10, 15 feet down. Seems like it really works well, especially on groups of fish or fish on stumps. Again, that's just my personal preference, some things that I see, but I feel like that rolling action, specifically this freeloader, just really works well on fish that are a little bit deeper. Contrary to that, there's the Mooch Minnow. This is a bait that I feel like works really well, again, across all parts of the water column, but fish that are up a little bit higher, fish that are chasing bait, fish that are moving really fast. This bait doesn't have a ton of side-to-side action. It's more in that tail. As you can see in the underwater footage, that tail really just goes nuts behind that bait, especially when you're pulling it up and away. We shot a video on this fall, chasing suspended smallmouth with the Mooch Minnow, and I feel like it is a perfect bait for that, for fishing suspended fish in particular. That little tail just right in their face is going up away. I think there's just something to that. When the bait's a little bit more streamlined, it's going up and away, I think that really drives fish nuts. Again, there's a time and place for everything, where you might want a rolling bait for suspended fish, you might not, and vice versa. But these are just some of my personal preferences. But again, looking at that Mooch Minnow underwater, super natural looking. It's a lot of action in that tail, not much side-to-side action, that little kicker in there. Especially with this TPE material, this stuff is super soft. So that bait, you don't have to do much to get that tail really working. All you have to do is just a little shake of the rod and that tail starts going nuts. Super good bait. Again, that TPE, super stretchy. You can catch a million fish on just one of these things. This is definitely one of my favorites here. So next up, we're gonna look at the BWA Scorpio Tail Minnow. As you can see here again, another pretty minnow design there. What's cool about this one is you can actually do quite a bit with this bait outside of minnow fishing. You could rig this as a fluke, you could use this as a trailer, you name it, but we got it rigged up as a minnow here. It's a little bit of a sneakier minnow. It's a lot of tail action in that bait. It has a really cool design where it has a really bulbous tail on it there. So that tail, when you just twitch that rod tip, kind of hit it on slack, you can see that tail just really wants to pendulum in place. Looks really pretty. And this is another one of those baits where I'd probably throw this in a little bit colder water, situations where you don't want as much tail action. Again, colder water, pressured fish. Somewhere along those lines is where I'd reach for this minnow, something where you just don't want a ton of action. And this bait out the pack comes scented, and it is also a plastisol bait. Again, super simple, nothing crazy going on here. They're easy to rig and easy to fish. So next up here we have the Dawn by Jenko. We have this one rigged up on a jig head that is specifically designed for this bait. And as you can see in the underwaters, paired with that jig head, it makes that bait roll really well. It's another one of those rolling baits. Has that really good side-to-side action. Again, throwing that in a little bit warmer water, if you're around groups of fish trying to get fish really fired up, or whenever it seems like you're just around really aggressive fish, that rolling action, really something to that when you get around fish that are really fired up, and just for making fish bite. Again, it's all got a time and place. Again, that bait is just a standard plastisol material. Comes in a bunch of really pretty colors too, and a couple of different sizes. And next we have arguably one of the hottest baits in the minnow market right now, the Depths Sakamatada Shad. This is a bait that, again, is very hard to get a hold of right now just because everyone wants them. They straight up catch them, man. There's no way around it. And with this bait, you'll just notice it when you grab one. I don't know what this material is and exactly the consistency is, but I think part of what makes it so good is just how real this thing feels. It has a lot of salt to it, but that tail is just super, super soft. Even just in my hand there, you can see it. And you can see it in the underwaters. When that bait gets rolling, that tail is doing all kinds of crazy stuff, rolls really well. It's another one of those baits where you can rig it a couple of different ways to get different actions out of it. How we have it rigged, like you can see in the underwaters here, gets a really good rolling action out of it. If I was to go more on the nose, you get a little bit more subtle presentation out of it, where that tail just kind of barely kicks around back there. So you can do a lot with that bait. And looking at the underwaters too, and even in my hand, you'll notice these wings, which look a little goofy looking at it at first, but those wings really give that bait a really unique action, give it a really good roll. It's part to it, definitely, that makes this bait just what it is. This is a bait that I've thrown on the TVA, throwing the 7 and the 8 inch for largemouth out on ledges. I've thrown the little 4 inchers, even the 3 inchers up here up north for smallmouth. The 4 inch for spotted bass, you name it. There's a bunch of sizes in this bait. It's one of those where whether it's smallmouth, spots, largemouth, it catches them. It's just a super good minnow bait. Now moving on to a little bit more of a finesse minnow here, we have the Spotlight minnow. The ones in these underwaters here that you're seeing, this is the 4 incher in this. And when you crack open the pack here, you'll smell the good old Strike King scent that everybody knows and loves. Another cool thing about it too is this bait has sonic coat built into the bait. Helps you see that bait a little bit better on forward facing. That's kind of a super cool new advancement in the minnow game. Again, it's one of those baits where it's all in the tail. You can see that tail has really good just floating action. Just looks like a dying minnow kind of plugging along a little bit. This is a minnow I'm going to go for it again when it's really cold. Those winter months down south where you get those fish that are starting to suspend. A lot of times the bait fish is really small too, so that smaller profile, that little bit of kicking in the back just drives fish nuts. Same goes for up north, late fall smallmouth. It has just the right action to make those fish bite, even when the bite's super tough, pretty cold out. I've seen it where less is more, where sometimes that bait barely moves and that's just the way they want it. And this is one of those minnows to me where that really shines, where it doesn't do a ton on the back end, doesn't have a ton of rolling action, but that tail just kind of flickers like that. I've seen times where that just runs laps around other baits that have a bunch of rolling action to them. Again, all have a time and place. Personally, I see this minnow shining again in colder conditions, pressured fish, that pretty compact size. That tail that just moves just enough, man, that's gonna be a killer for cold water. And next up in the lineup here, we have another what I would consider working man minnow, the XPS Rockin Shad. This is a bait that, again, you can find them everywhere. They're in stock and they work super well for the price. Again, it's a really good looking minnow. It's got the wings on the side there, and with that profile that it has, again, you get that good rolling action out of the bait, as you can see in the underwater footage. That bait works pretty effortlessly. All you have to do is pop slack in that rod, and that bait rocks back and forward pretty dang easily. It looks really good underwater. And next over we have the Jackal Drift Fry. This is another one of those minnows that has been around from the jump of the minnow craze. Pretty cool little bait, super realistic colors with that bait. And as you can see on the front there, that's another cool part, that little bill on the front. Again, that's something that's totally unique to this bait. you could see there, that little bill gives that bait some really cool, tight rolling action. And this is a bait that I'm gonna reach for in clear water conditions or where there's a little bit smaller bait fish. This does come in different sizes, but with this 4-inch one here, again, I'm gonna throw this around smallmouth especially. This is a pretty dang good bait up here in the North Country. We have a lot of clear water smallmouth. When it's kind of that June, July period post-spawn where they start to get fired up finally again, that not subtle action, but not crazy action, the in-between action can really shine. Some of these other baits, they have a real wide rolling action. This particular bait, you can see it's super tight rolling action. That's kind of a good middle ground between that rolling, hard rolling that has a lot of action, but then a bait that doesn't move at all. It's kind of that perfect middle ground to where it's not too much, it's not too little. You can see that tail there too, super cool tail design, looks super natural, and in the underwaters again, that bait just quick rock and that tail follows with that quick shake. Super cool natural looking bait. And last but certainly not least, we have the Berkeley Drip Minnow. One of the first things that stands out about this minnow, as you can see in the underwaters, super realistic. The colors that are in these baits is about as natural as it gets, from perch colors to shiner colors. This one here is a real shinery schmelt looking color. And in the water, it really looks like a minnow between the eyes, the print, everything to it. Super natural looking bait, especially in the action too. It's another one of those baits where that tail just kind of dances in the back. It rolls really well, especially when you're working on and popping it hard on slack. But also if you just barely twitch that bait, that tail just really flutters behind that bait. Pretty cool that you can do a lot with just one minnow. Whether I'm targeting active fish and I want that thing to roll, if I'm fishing for some little bit sluggish fish and I want that bait just barely moving, that drip minnow is kind of the best of both worlds. This bait also comes in a handful of different sizes, and with that Fusion 19 head that you see paired on there, same thing. It comes in different sizes and hook sizes, so that way you can really plug and match the correct minnow with the correct jig head. And like you can see with the packaging here, it's the good old Berkeley power bait that everybody knows. You could smell it out the pack. She comes scented, ready to rock. So there it is, a full rundown on a bunch of different minnow baits that we're all using today. We'd love for you guys to comment below, let us know what you think, as well as some other ideas of potential videos, you know, going over some underwater footage of these baits and just taking an up close and personal look at them. The minnow game is something that's super fun. It's obviously taken the fishing world by storm these last couple years, and for good reason. It just straight up catches fish. So I hope this helps you guys put some more fish in the boat. I really recommend buying a handful of different jig heads, buying a handful of different minnows, going out there and just mixing and matching. I guarantee you that you're gonna find some little sneaky setup out there that puts a ton of fish in the boat for you.